Hello listeners, welcome to another webinar by MHT. मेरा नाम राजिका है and I'm the host for today's enriching and exciting session. So I'm just gonna say a little bit about mental health today. So Mental Health Today is a website that connects Indian mental health professionals to the platform where they can directly connect with their audience. हम aim करते हैं to create awareness, to show what's happening in the field via blogs, podcasts, webinars. There's an MHT store, there's an MHT directory. Please go check it out on www.mentalhealthtoday.co.in. So, introducing today's topic and our speaker. So, सबसे पहले, I would like to invite and welcome Ms. Deepapriya to this webinar called Creating a New Normal.
Thank you.
A little bit about ma'am. She's from Mumbai. She's a clinical psychologist. She has worked extensively with the queer community. She is also a trained queer affirmative therapist. She's a mental health activist. She is, she's trained in transactional analysis, integrative somatic therapy. She's client-centered therapy. Like, there are so many things, ma'am. I don't know what all to say, actually. So, introducing the concept for today. Since I personally feel, and we at MHT also feel, that queer community is a minority. And there are so many misunderstandings about the society and the community, people who belong to the community. So many of us don't even know the full form of the rainbow. And, what is there, what does it comprise, things like that. And this is also seen in the mental health professionals themselves, where, it's just wrong. It just doesn't seem to be right what is happening in the community. So today's webinar is going to address all of this and a lot more, where we're going to look at the community, what it entails, how does it feel like to be a part of the community, look at the develop a queer lens, and how to be a responsible. So the time, ma'am, I think I'm just going to start with the first question. And I think that is something that's very relevant for people who belong to the community. So sabse pehle, I think we want to know ki, how does one find out that they're a part of the community or they belong to the LGBTQ plus community?
So first of all, thank you for such a warm welcome. And now when you're saying that, how do you belong? Right from the onset, children know that they are not like their peers, or there are certain things that you like that your peers don't, right? But it actually becomes it becomes highlighted when sexuality emerges, right? So when an individual actually experiences attraction, their peers would be talking about opposite sex attraction, whereas they would be looking at same sex attractions, right? So it's basically at that particular point that you know that there's something different, or you don't fit into the normative aspect, right? Now, when we are looking at when the difference happens, because everywhere we are only looking at, let's take relationships in general, right? We are only looking at it from a heterosexual point of view. Let's take the cartoons that you probably saw growing up, right? Family ka depiction itself was a male member, a female member, and children. So in your head, that's when it starts becoming a problem, saying that I don't feel that kind of attraction, right? So when they realize that they don't fit into the normative, that's when the exploration starts.
Right. Right. So can you tell us a little bit about the rainbow? What does it stand for? Just for our knowledge and our listeners' knowledge, what does actually the rainbow entail?
Okay, so before we go into the rainbow aspect, let's look at some of the things that we use very interchangeably, which is gender identity, sex, sexuality, and expression, right? Gender identity is essentially how I look at myself, right? Which means if I feel like I'm a man, I'm a man. So gender identity is how I believe I am. Now, sex, on the other hand, is anatomical, which is basically, it's a biological aspect. which
Right.
is the basis for your assigned gender. Assigned gender is when you're born. The doctor says it's a
Right.
girl or it's a boy. Essentially, what they mean is the child has either a penis or a vagina. They don't mean the child will eventually grow up and identify as a woman or identify as a man or identify as genderqueer, right? So the difference is we usually interchange sex and gender identity, right? Now, the second aspect of it is the sexuality bit coming in. Now, sexuality is sexual attraction or romantic feelings that I have or anyone has towards members of same sex or gender or other sex or gender. This is where
Correct.
the lens of binary comes in, wherein a man has to be attracted to a woman and a woman has to be attracted to a man. That's the normative definition, right?
Correct.
But sexuality can be a varied. This is where the rainbow actual aspect comes in, which is lesbian would be a woman who is attracted to a woman. Now, this can be a cisgendered woman or a trans woman, right?
Right.
Trans woman would be someone who was assigned the sex of male, but is a woman,
Woman. Right.
right? So even they would come under women because they identify as women.
Right.
Gay men are men who are attracted to men. Trans individuals are individuals who are not satisfied with the or who don't identify with the sex that has been assigned to them, or they don't belong, they don't necessarily adhere to the norm which has been imposed on them, saying that you were born like this so you have to be like this. This is where the next aspect comes in, the gender expression. It is basically how I present my gender, right? I can be a woman, I can feel like a woman, but I don't necessarily have to dress up in the conventional way of a woman. That doesn't make me any less of a woman, right? So this is one of the things that we might want to understand, which is sex is not equal to gender, is not equal to sexuality, is not equal to gender expression.
Right. I think that I also personally was using these under interchangeably. Definitely, that I think gave me a little bit of an insight. Correct. Okay. So, ma'am, there is also more to LGBTQ. So after Q, there we also have IEA or PD. So plus sometimes. So then, what are all these categories or
So
communities?
intersex So, intersex individuals are individuals who have biological characteristics of both a male and a female, right? And
Okay.
asexual individuals are, again, asexuality is not just people who don't want to have sex. There are, again, multiple layers. So, rainbow is very inclusive that way, right? So,
Right.
you have your gray sexuals, you have your demisexuals, you have your aromantics, right? So, the entire spectrum is even asexuality is not just one size fits all,
Right.
right?
Right. I think that is one of the most inclusive things I've ever heard. Personally, I don't feel there are other communities that are at that inclusive. Personally, I would say. So, ma'am, I think then coming back to people who belong to the community, people who identify with the community. So there is this phase that is very commonly known, coming out of the closet. So what is that? How important is it to actually come out of the closet?
Coming out of the closet is a very personal thing. It's extremely private.
Right.
So it just because one individual had one kind of experience doesn't mean everyone in the community is going to have the same kind of experience. And it's not like you come out once and it's done. You come out multiple times, and sometimes multiple times to the same people, because they might not necessarily understand or might not necessarily accept. So it's a gradual process and it's an extremely personal process. So no two people can have the same path, and it's not like a one shot destination, right? And it's your choice. With whom do you want to come out to? How much of the information do you want to give out? Are you feeling safe? All of these things are very important to consider. Like, for example, if people are in an environment where you know your family is not going to accept, right? There's no, and you know that there are going to be severe repercussions. You don't have to come out to them, but you can have like a family of choice where you know that these are people with whom I can actually just be.
Right.
So you can come out to them,
Right.
right?
So it's not compulsory, right? To come out to the family and come out to your parents when you know
Absolutely
they will
not.
not accept.
And
Okay.
it's also like, let's take it, right? If your friend comes out to you, right? You're not going to force them to come out just because they came out to you. They felt comfortable with you. They felt that this is a space where I can actually be, and my decision is going to be heard, and I'm not going to be hurt. And it's a very, if you look at it from the point of the view of an individual who's coming out, there's so much pressure, right? You're also feeling that my relationship dynamic with the person sitting in front of me is going to change or might change. So it's also that fear that's coming out,
Right. There's
right?
not just
So,
one thing.
yeah. So I wouldn't say if the individual is not comfortable with someone, I would say go with your judgment. It's perfectly fine. You don't have to force yourself to come out to anyone. If you feel like it, when you're ready, if you're ready, you can come out.
Correct. I think that's a very enlightening thing to hear, personally, if I would say. So, ma'am, what should allies do? I feel that this is, as you said,
Hmm.
it's such a big step, right? And it can seriously alter your relationship dynamics with the individual. It can have an effect on how you look at it, okay, and how the person perceives you as a friend or as an ally or as a relationship, whatever the case might be. So how should, what would the best way be, or what would the responsible way be for an ally to, let's say, react when something like this happens and when somebody trusts you enough to come out?
Firstly, understand that it's extremely difficult for the person who's coming out, and they are extremely afraid of the dynamics changing. And you are important enough in their life for them to take this effort to come out, right? They find you to be important. That's why they are putting in this kind of effort. And it's very important for you to respond in a positive way, because this is going to affect the way they are going to perceive coming out in future, like coming going forward. And essentially, if the person is coming out, they are trying to tell you that, hey, I want you to be part of my life, and I don't want to not share certain aspects of my life with you. So essentially, what, instead of saying what you can say, I would say what you're not supposed to say.
Right.
So let's not be too narcissistic and say, why didn't you come out to me earlier? It took them long enough for them to process and come out to you. So respect the journey.
Right.
Second is, no individual wants to hear that, hey, I am straight, don't hit on me, right? So
Right.
not every gay individual is attracted to every individual of the same gender, like how every heterosexual individual is not attracted to every other member of the opposite sex, right? And also remember that this is the same person that you know, that you probably had a great time with, probably you grew up with, have seen growing up throughout. And this is a person who thinks that you can be trusted with this information, so please be respectful of that. Which means, as far as possible, don't out them. By as far as possible, I mean, even unconsciously, don't do it. Like, for example,
Right.
if their preferred pronoun is not in is not something that they have expressed explicitly outside, ask if you can use that particular pronoun while addressing, or which pronoun would they be comfortable when you're addressing that individual out in the open. That can also out an individual, right? So
Right.
ask, explicitly ask, and as far as possible, try to learn up. Don't expect your friend or your sibling or your parent or your kid to educate you on all of this. Like, put in that effort to read up a little bit about
Right.
everything, that all the questions that you have. It's not like you can't ask questions, but don't make this person the sole individual who is responsible to educate you,
Right.
right?
It's not fair on them. Correct. I think we as individuals have to take that step, being a part of the community or not, just to
True.
gain acceptance. And in order to create this normal, we have to understand what this normal is.
Hmm.
Definitely. So, coming to this topic only, so what are your thoughts about conversion therapy?
Okay. So recently, Anjana Harish passed away, right? She died by
Right.
suicide.
Right.
And we know there's a video of her going live, which actually says the kind of treatment that she got, right? No one should be told that their identity can be cured. That is just cruel, right? You cannot tell an individual that your identity is flawed or your identity is not okay to be cured. It is a dangerous, traumatic, useless, and completely ineffective therapy line or treatment. I mean, let's look at it in a very logistical manner. All right, over 500 species of animals, it's been studied that they display homosexual behavior. Okay, it is not abnormal. One, two. You're calling it abnormal, and this line of treatment has been in place since 1960s, and it hasn't cured anyone. Right?
Right.
There is literally no proof that it works. Yes, you're correlating with the behavior, but the behavior is, let's look at it. What exactly is conversion therapy? You are put in a institutionalized space where you're asked to write about your sexual fantasies. Initially, it was lobotomy. It was, they would give you electric shocks, and it was, you literally were punished for having sexual fantasies to a point where the minute you get sexually attracted, fear comes in. So that's exactly what you're doing, right?
Right.
Which is why it is a very scarring process, right? Now, this is coming from the view that something is wrong with you, so something needs to be cured, and that is coming from the perspective that we have made it to be anything non-normative is equal to abnormal, right? Let's look at some of the things that were normative. Child marriage was normative once upon a time. Was it normal? Absolutely not. Sati was normative.
Right.
Was it
Right.
normal? No, it wasn't.
No.
Right? So, right now, when you're saying that normative sexuality is heterosexuality, and that too missionary sex, right? Any deviation in that is looked at as abnormal and needs to be cured. So,
Right.
which means you're going to look at an individual who does not fit into this box of heteronormativity. You're going to look at the person and say this is an abnormal individual, right? And that is where this particular mentality is coming from, wherein you would
Right.
say, I this is an individual who needs to be cured. Now, as simple as when a client comes to me and says, hey, I don't want to be gay. What I hear is, I'm tired of being oppressed. I'm tired of being bullied. I'm tired of the societal pressure and of not having an idea if I would have a romantic partner and if I can have a family with that partner. I don't have hope. I'm tired of
Right.
that. Now, imagine if that was removed, right? If that was completely removed and you were allowed to be with whomever you want, it's perfectly fine. Then this concern wouldn't come in. So anytime the individual comes with, even when the person itself comes and says, hey, I don't want to be gay, as professionals, it becomes our responsibility to understand the societal impact that's on this individual, how much pressure this person is going through, right? Now, statistically speaking, impact of conversion treatment, post conversion therapy, an individual is 8.5 times more likely to attempt suicide
My God.
and 6 times more likely to develop high depression and 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with substance abuse issue.
My
A
goodness.
treatment cannot do this to you.
Right. Isn't the treatment's purpose to help you?
Exactly. And the reason why I feel that, one, it should be banned. It's barbaric. It should be banned, right? Because individuals get night terrors, flashbacks, and fear just with. So the minute you get any sexual desire, fear creeps in, right? And it's on the premise of
Right.
a treatment is supposed to do something good for you. As healthcare professionals, you take a ought not to damage the individual or harm the individual. And this is doing every single bit of it, right? And I feel it is like a medicalized oppression of a marginalized community because you
Right.
think you know everything that is normal and you say that this doesn't fit. So I'm going to do everything in my capacity to eliminate it, even if it means to dehumanize the individual,
Right.
right? Now, this is all coming from the framework that because we believe there is only one way to love. It has to be between a man and a woman, and a man has to be the dominant one, and the woman has to be the petite, submissive, feminine.
Feminine one.
And we are taught to believe that this is right and this is wrong, whereas there's nothing right or wrong, right? Now, let's just take section 377, for example.
Right.
Again, this kind of high, made things difficult for the community and for us as practitioners, right? Because it deemed anyone who doesn't fit into the normative as criminals. And it became a tool that parents would use to say, if you do this, you are a criminal, you can be arrested. Then they would be forced to put into rehabilitation centers, hospitals, and even a lot of religious institutes has conversion therapy happening, right? And
Right.
what's sad is India, despite knowing all of this, has not banned conversion therapy. As in, Google it, and you will find a lot of people who are doing this,
Right.
right?
Like just hearing about this kind of giving me goosebumps. Like it is wrong on so many levels, and it is just, I think, us as a community failing to just, giving them the acceptance and giving that community the acceptance that it deserves. So
Yeah.
on this topic, so what's the way to, practice this acceptance? So especially as mental health professionals and, people, we are the people who can, and I hope can actually make a little bit of change in the coming future. So what can we do as mental health professionals and also as a community to help people who belong to the LGBTQ community?
The first thing probably is to say outright saying that, hey, I am affirmative, which means you're putting it out there saying, I don't do conversion therapy. I will not entertain this, and taking a stand actively,
Right.
right? Now, second is to educate yourself. By that, I mean the terminologies, proper pronouns to use, and as simple as just introducing yourself with your pronoun, right? That just
Right.
opens up the conversation saying that, hey, this is a space where I can ask for my preferred pronoun to be, and I can just be, right? While looking at the diagnosis, let's not just stick to ICD DSM, and let's go a little bit beyond just the symptomatology and look at how the society and the vulnerability that the individual been has been experiencing, and how is that impacting them, and instead of just looking at textbook diagnosis, right?
Right.
We are all taught DSM and ICD, and by the time we graduate we have literally by hearted it cover to cover, But
Right.
what we refuse to acknowledge is the minute you're looking at the symptoms, you're forgetting to look at the person. And the person just becomes a diagnosis,
Right.
which is again another way of oppressing the client. And it's another way of you distancing yourself, right? And we all know that the more stress an individual experiences, the more vulnerable the individual gets towards any mental health concerns, right? All of us have equal probability of getting any mental health concerns.
Right.
The level of stressor that we are experiencing and a little bit of genetics come into play, right? So if you're looking at day-to-day life of an individual who's trying to hide their sexuality from everyone, imagine this. You wake up, you get ready, you're thinking, what clothes can I wear so that I'm not outed? Not what clothes I wear so that I can be comfortable.
Right.
You go out and you're saying, I need to walk in a particular way so that people don't call me certain things. Then you go in and you're like constantly policing yourself about the kind of information that you would give, right? Even with your friends, for example, right? A heterosexual individual has the privilege of saying, hey, I had like a fight with my boyfriend, I had a fight with my girlfriend, right? But the same thing, an individual who hasn't come out does not have the liberty to say it, because then the question would be, who is this partner? Then you would have to come out. So you are like
Right.
filtering your social communication also, right? So all of this kind of adds your vulnerability, right? How many things are you going to look at? You're constantly on hypervigilance,
Right.
because you know if you're not, there are bullies, there is discrimination, and these are facts, which is why we need to look at the social aspect and the vulnerabilities and not just DSM and ICD.
Right. I think we have to go beyond. Definitely, we have to go beyond the books. Because,
And it is also very important that you create that one safe space, right? So this is one
right.
space.
Right.
I think it's your duty as a professional to create that safe space where your client can just come and feel secure. And I don't mean don't challenge your clients. Of course, the therapeutic process would involve a lot of challenging, but even in that, they know that you got their back,
Right.
right? And there are multiple courses that you can do and books that you can read. Like, for example, Mariwala Health Initiative has the QACP training program, right? The facilitators are fantastic. They are they have extensive research knowledge, and they also are practitioners in the community. And there are books like Gay Affirmative Counseling Practices, which is written by Ketki Ranade and Shruti Chakravarti. You have the Handbook of Affirmative Psychotherapy by APA. You have other books, like resources are there. But we
Right.
need to make the effort to go and read about it.
Right. Go beyond our graduation knowledge,
Yes.
learn, research, talk to people. I
And
feel
also include it in the graduation knowledge.
that, yes. I was coming to that because we never saw it. Like when I was graduating, and it's not very far back. I graduated in 2017, which is like 3 years ago. And that time, there was no, that time, at this time also, there was no separate paper or separate section that deals with the queer community. And definitely, I think that is one thing that we should, try to work towards and gain a little bit of acceptance. So once we get it at that level, we might be able to, make even the therapist and the future therapist and counselor a little more immune and a little more accepting to the whole community.
See, the whole point is not about just acceptance, right?
Right.
It's your duty to be aware of it,
Right. Definitely.
right?
Definitely.
So again, it's one thing to call yourself as a ally, and it's one thing to call yourself as an affirmative practitioner. right?
Right. Definitely. So coming to this only, so then can you tell us a little bit about, let's say, this practice? Since you have been working with the community, what are the sort of issues that you encounter? Like a generic example, if you can give us something that you encountered and seen while practicing with the community.
So one of the things is, like I mentioned, the vulnerability to certain type of disorders, right? And the
Right.
vulnerability is not a personal, it's not because of any personal lacking or anything. It's because of the constant stress that the individual has to go through, right? And the reason behind these stress is the individual constantly is marginalized. The community itself is marginalized by religious cults, by your family. Like Anjana Harish's family took Anjana Harish and put her in the therapy place where she was physically and emotionally abused, right?
Right.
Completely homophobic content is being thrown at you every single day, right? It can be like saying that it's just a joke. Why don't you deal with it? It's not just a joke. No, what they say, right? Joke is just a softer way of calling a reality a reality. You're not going to
Right.
joke about things that are important. You're not supposed to.
Right.
It shows your mentality, right? Without the awareness, the individual feels that they constantly have to take a step back, even from close relationships, which puts them at a higher risk, like depression, death by suicide, suicidal ideation, non suicidal self harm. All of this is present, which clearly means we as a society are doing something massively wrong.
Right. So on this only, since we've seen how, let's say, some people can be toxic, and there's no softer way to put this. There will always be people who will not accept and who will, you know, not be okay with this certain sexuality that you are going through. So in those cases, is it fine to, let's say, just let go of those individuals for your own mental health peace?
Don't get me wrong, when you said sexuality you're going through,
Right. See,
it seems like a
correct.
phrase,
Yes,
right?
correct.
You're not going through, it's your sexuality. It
It's my
just,
sexuality.
once it emerged, it's emerged,
Right.
right?
Right.
So now, when you're looking at family itself, the toxicity, right? It's natural for all of us to want to have a space where we are loved, where we find that kindness and acceptance, and where we don't feel trapped, right? However, if you do feel trapped and that you feel like you're going to be forced into doing certain things that you're not comfortable with, or forced into behaving in a way that doesn't sit well with you, or it goes against your identity, it's okay to put your need before anyone else's, and it's okay to end that relationship or to distance yourself from that relationship, right? I understand that sometimes it's not possible to completely cut ties, but it's very important for us to find a family of choice. Now, family of choice would be people that you would call as family because they do the role of, role of a family, which is there for you,
Right.
right? They're there for you. You can talk to them. These are individuals with whom you don't have to mince words. But if you can't find that with your own family, you can find that with people around who can offer you this. And it's okay for you to choose that, right? We all come from this mentality, right? Family matlab, it, it's a good place, not for all.
Right.
So it's okay for you to put yourself first and say, this is not okay. This is not acceptable for me. I need this from somewhere else. And that's okay.
Right. I
And for the
think that's
families also, maybe to go that extra mile, because at the end of the day, you've seen this person growing up, or you've seen this person and you viewed this individual as a sibling, elder sibling, younger sibling, or a parent. So taking that little bit of effort to ensure that you're not imposing your value system on them would create and which would mean that your family unit becomes more stronger.
Right. Right. I think this whole just understanding that it's okay. It's okay to put yourself as priority. It's okay to give yourself the acceptance that you want and the family of choice that you want. I feel it's a very, very empowering to just hear, and especially also to the families, just being the family that your child wants. So we have seen that media in particular has a big impact on how people view the community or anything for that matter. All the time there's TV that is on, there is these multiple streaming channels that are on YouTube that is on, and people are gaining things out of it and people are looking at things out of it. So what is your let's say thoughts on the media portrayal of the community?
So one of the things that I would like to say is yes, media is portraying a lot, or is trying to be more inclusive. Okay. Now, having said that, when you try to even fit a homosexual relationship or a bisexual relationship into the heteronormative framework, that kind of defeats the purpose, right? Look at the picturization. Even if two men are in a relationship, one is forced to take on in the media the way it is being depicted in a more feminine way, and one takes a more masculine
Right.
role.
Right.
It is not like that. One, two. It's important for filmmakers and other artists to be very aware of the message that they are sending, because community is not a joke. You're using people as a joke.
Right.
Okay, it is not acceptable, it is not okay, and you are part of the problem,
Right.
right? Certain shows, certain movies, for example, are doing well, or at least are giving the right messages. Certain shows, for example, right? Like Riverdale shows about same-sex relationship, right?
Right.
And it has shown it the way it is. Now, it is very important for us. And let's take Rick Riordan. In He has
Correct.
introduced characters, and
Correct.
the way the individual has written is inclusive, right? So media has a huge role to play. Like, for example, movies like Dostana and Kal Ho Na Ho are like really bad depiction of the community. You're making the individual seem like, or the relationship seem like a joke. It isn't,
Right.
right? And you're perpetrating a homophobic culture.
Right. Because that is where we were coming from. We have seen movies like Dostana, which was the very, let's say, ahead of its time movie for according to some people. And those songs that were there, especially I remember one song that was "Mummy ka ladla bigad gaya" and "Dulan ban gaya," things like that. And there were so many people, dancing to it and singing to it, and it just kind of breaks my heart to just imagine being somebody from the community and who's actually listening to this and just
Yeah.
feeling it. So definitely. So I think we've come to the almost end of the webinar where I'm going to be getting done with my questions and then we're going to take live questions that we've got. So in the end, ma'am, do you have any advice to our listeners, even though this has almost been like a very informational and an awareness sort of a webinar where we've been trying to, let's say, you have been trying to, give a little bit of, let's say, basic skill on how to deal with the community. So, what is your advice to our listeners?
To begin with, language, right? Calling something normal and others means the others is abnormal, which is wrong. which is why we use the word normative, right? Second is pronouns. Respect the pronouns. It's okay. It takes time for you to understand, maybe, to because it's conditioning, right? We learned to pronounce he and she. Now we need to also be more inclusive and ask the individual, and it's unlearning. So take a conscious effort to unlearn, right? And avoid looking at the community as exotic, abnormal, weird, or there for your entertainment. These are individuals you're talking about, right? And sexuality is fluid, not just in human beings, but in nature itself. Sexuality is fluid, like a lot of other things,
Right.
right? Like I was saying, there are over 500 species where it's found. Homosexuality is found literally in all species, from mammals to birds to fish to reptile to amphibians to insects, which means it can't be more normal. You expecting every single human being to be heterosexual is abnormal.
Correct. Correct. Definitely. I think this is something that I'm going to write and put it out there when I open my own clinic. Just creating that safe space is something that I am personally aiming for. And with that note, let's go ahead because we have so many questions that we have got in the session, in the live section. So we'll just take, let's say, about 4 to 5 questions because of the time constraints, and remaining we will address personally. So all
Sure.
the questions that we do not take up in the webinar, we will be reaching out to you from the MHT team, and we will be addressing the questions that you have said. Okay. So the first question says, okay, uh, okay, what is that? How can school be an inclusive and safe environment for children who wish to identify themselves with the community? How to spread awareness about its sensitivity?
First is creating a zero tolerance bullying space, right?
Right.
Second is, while you're teaching kids, include the aspect of pronouns and say it's okay, and also give the individual a choice, right, to choose their uniforms.
Hmm.
Like a lot of schools are doing it, they have gender neutral uniforms, right?
Yeah.
So inclusion in this way would ensure that it children are very adaptable,
Right.
right? So the minute you're putting content out in terms of the cartoons they watch or in terms of the books that they read, if you introduce this concept to them as it is without your bias, children will not create a problem. So schools can include it, like they have like moral education, there are stories that they read, or there are English literature, just keeping one segment which addresses individual differences would go a long way to making children more affirmative individuals, right? And by that I mean they are going to be disability friendly, they're going to be, there's not going to be any sexist comments that come out, because you're training them not to have all of it,
Yeah.
which means you're creating inclusive human beings, good human beings.
Right. Definitely. I think it all starts at that age, and starts as in the whole of us accepting and creating our view to the society, creating our view to the environment around us. It starts from when you're a child. So definitely getting it on board and letting people know that this is also something that is completely normal. It is going to be a part of your community once you grow up. We might be able to just create that inclusion and
So
acceptance.
exposure to diversity is the only way for
Right.
inclusion to happen.
Right. Definitely. Okay. So the next question here says, Can you talk more about the assumption of heteronormativity?
Okay. So assumption of heteronormativity is basically if, say, two same-sex couple are walking together, you would assume they are friends
Hmm. Right.
because one is not a boy and one is not a girl,
Right.
right? Or you assume that if the person says, I'm in a relationship, you look at the person's expression, gender expression, and say, if you think that this person is female, you would say, oh, so what are your problems with your boyfriend? You assume
Right.
heterosexuality is the norm, right? From your language to the way you project, all of it
Right.
basically is heteronormative in nature.
Definitely.
So essentially, believing in the binary.
Right. And on this only, there's another question that says self acceptance. How difficult is it?
It can be a huge journey if you're coming from a space where you're constantly told you need to be cured,
Right.
or you are being a disappointment to people whom you're supposed to love. It can be extremely difficult at that time.
Right.
But just allowing yourself and telling yourself there's nothing wrong with you, right? And moving forward, gradually, and it's unlearning at the end of the day, right? So
Right.
you have been brought up, like there are certain, I mean, all religious leaders, for example, if you notice, say the most bizarrely stupid things. So your relationship with God is questioned because of your
Right.
identity. So you're saying that if my God itself can't accept me, so it's important for us to create this alternative saying that it's normal and it's you are valued as who you are and you don't need to change.
Right.
The minute that happens, then it self acceptance is a consistent process, right?
Right. This goes for, I think, everybody who's listening, not just the people who belong to the community who are not from the community. Everybody who's listening, self acceptance is a very, big process and a ever lifelong process that we go through. So, next question says, um, could you also throw light on the nature of gay slash lesbian relationships? This is in relation to what you said right now about how media shows one person as feminine and the other one as more masculine.
So again, we are trying to box people. Even
Right.
in a same sex relationship, you're trying to box people,
Right.
right? So we expect one person to be more masculine and we expect one person to be more feminine, right?
Hmm.
That's not the norm. The relationship can just evolve the way the individual wants. So a person in a relationship can be more masculine looking or more feminine looking, but
Hmm.
don't necessarily take on that particular role,
Correct.
right? Your assumption that relationship can happen like this only, there has to be one husband and one wife, that's where the problem comes from. That's where
Right.
you start invalidating one person in the unit.
Correct. So, okay. Next question says, what can the queer community themselves do to reduce the constant stress of being discriminated by the society?
Well, again, you want queer labor. the, the community is doing everything. The community as a whole with the allies are doing a lot and trying for discrimination to be questioned. But
Right.
discrimination does not happen from just the community itself. No, it happens from outside,
Right.
which means the outside needs to take more onus and say, let me take a stand and not be discriminatory. Let me learn to not be discriminatory. Let me not make comments that are homophobic in nature, comments that are insensitive. So it's the community as a whole. It's our responsibility also to ensure that the wrong that has been done forever, we need to rectify that. We need to rectify the wrong that has been done.
Correct. Correct. I think this whole webinar has just been about this, and the whole, this whole, let's say, inclusion that we are trying to aim for. So another question is, I think it's also that something we addressed in the webinar already, but it says, is it fine for the individual to let go of some of their immediate circle if they can't gain their acceptance?
Absolutely.
Right. Like,
If it
I
is
know,
hurting you, you can take the call and you can walk away.
correct. We have said this in the webinar also, where it is completely fine and it is okay. You can find your choice of family. You can move ahead. You can let go of this
And
circle
you
that you're
can set
mentioning.
boundaries with people you can't cut ties
Right.
and say, this is not something I want to talk to you about.
Right. Right.
Right.
Only, I feel like only when we talk can, we be able to achieve the level of inclusion that we are trying to go. Set boundaries, talk to people, tell them. So it might, make a little bit of difference. Then the last question we're going to take for today's webinar is, ma'am, can you also suggest some ways as an ally that we can practice if ally sees some bullying or toxic comments passed to an individual? How can an ally support the individual from outside of the close circle?
Call it out. Call a bully a bully.
Right.
If you know that there are certain people in your community, in your immediate circle, who are making homophobic comments, don't be afraid to cut ties, because it's not just something that you say as a fad statement. It is political at the end of the day.
Right.
Right? It's a stand that you're taking. Right? If you can see a bully bullying someone, intervene. One. Two, if you can't intervene directly, write about it, post about it, talk to people. What are the line of action that we can take? All of that would help.
Right.
Right? But you cannot just be a bystander and let the abuse happen.
Correct. Correct. Just, I think, especially to this question, if you are a bystander and you are seeing something, this, if you take the step first and you try to stop the bullying, you might just gain a very good friend from the whole process. you know
Or if you can't, and if you are finding it in an intimidating situation, if you can do something to help the individual, by all means do it. Create a
right.
distraction, do whatever to ensure that the other person is safe, and then you can think of a plan of action.
Right. Definitely. So
But
with
it would
that,
be
huh,
important for us to take a stand against people who are, you know, for example, J.K. Rowling, right? I
right,
mean, I grew up reading Harry
reading
Potter,
Harry Potter. Right.
and to read her comment was cringeworthy, and I am annoyed and angry at her. And her response to it was also not okay. So boycotting, like there were multiple authors who gave up their awards that they got with
Yeah.
her because they don't want to share it. Now that is a classic ally stand, saying I don't stand with it,
Right.
right? So
Right.
that's one example that you as an ally can do. Say, I am not going to stand by you making these comments, xenophobic, heterosexist, homophobic comment.
Right. Definitely. I think it will take a lot from us also. It is a
Yes.
very big step to take. It is, first you to read, understand what is happening, educate yourself, and then taking this big stand on where you say that, I hopefully that you say that you support the community and you are standing with them. So
See, it's
with
not
that,
only
huh,
about the community support, right? It is
right,
also about you doing the right thing.
correct. Let's hope that people believe this to be the right thing. in the near future, and we hope that we are able to get more such people on board and come and talk to us. So with that, ma'am, I would like to thank you so much for coming on board, giving us such good insights, talking to us, and especially educating me personally. I have realized that there's a long way to go, and I personally have to read up a lot more before I can call myself as a affirmative therapist. So thank you so much. Thank you for coming on
Problem.
board.
And thank you for
And
inviting me.
definitely, you're always welcome. And to all the people, if you want to get in touch with ma'am, please do let us know in the comments below, or come tell us on the email or any of our social media handles. We will connect you with ma'am, if in case that is what you like. If you have any more questions, and especially the question that we did not answer today, we will be getting back to you. We will be coming, contacting you and telling you about it. And till then, please do visit the mental health website. It's a page that we have been trying to create, where there are a lot of blogs and podcasts, webinars, directory. There are things that might help, and there are resources and awareness tools that might help both to the professionals as well as the community. So please do check out the website on www.mentalhealthtoday.co.in. Once again, ma'am, thank you so much for being such a lovely, let's say, educator in this
Thank
webinar.
you.
And on that note, this is me, Rajika. I will be signing off now. And please do like, share, subscribe on our channel, so to keep viewing such more content. And tune next